just doing my thing. Oh, you keep hanging.
So I give you solutions, not just here's the problem, but I give you solutions.
I'm just doing my 6 in the morning, yeah, I'm on my dough. And I ain't gonna
And that's why I wrote the book. It took me, it's about 37 to 40 years of research.
cause I'm sipping on some herbs. Now I'm flourishing, life's an excursion. If you get it.
When you isolate a vitamin from its whole food form, it becomes nothing more than an isolated chemical, and your body actually has to work harder to break it down to its molecular structure.
Feeling so good, so good.
Welcome everybody to Get Healthy the Wynters Way with the Pure Cure, a complete guide to freeing your life from dangerous toxins. I am so excited today to have my dear friend in the place here, and she's an Ayurvedic naturopath. And before I introduce her, I want to share a story about how we met. You know, I've always been a person of intuitiveness, and I always have trusted my instincts. And when something really becomes really loud to me inside my being, I go for it. And one day I got an email, and I get hundreds of emails a week, and I just click through them, and all of a sudden I get this email from a friend of mine who sent me this email that said, do you want to go on a Panchakarma retreat to Bali? I didn't even know what a Panchakarma retreat was at the time, but I got chills up the back of my spine, and I went, I want to do this. I didn't quite know where Bali was, but something in my gut said, you need to do this. And so after a few days, I called Vijaya Stern, who was giving this Panchakarma retreat, and she was going to have a meeting with some of the people that were going on this retreat. And so I drove down to Laguna, and I met with Vijaya, and we just clicked instantly. And I was really excited to go on this journey and learn about Ayurvedic principles and a Panchakarma retreat. And so it was in March, right? March. Mm-hmm. So March comes, and I get on the airplane, and it takes me to Denzapar, and I get off, and then I get greeted. And from the moment I got off the airplane till the moment I got back on the airplane, it was paradise. In fact, our theme became, does it get any better than this? I was driven into a place called Ubud, and Ubud is a most amazing place I've ever been to. It smells of incense and rose petals. I was driven to get a massage. What else does one do when you have flown 14 hours? And they put me into this massage place, and I go into the room, and there's a bath filled with rose petals and incense and essences, and the journey started there. So we started our Panchakarma retreat, which Vijaya will share what that's all about, and we just really connected. She became my sister, and from another mother. And so I want to bring her on so we can both have into this conversation. So welcome to the studio, Vijaya Stern.
Thank you, Sharyn. It's so fun to be here with you now.
We have so much fun. We really have fun together. We really connected. And you want to share a little bit about this, what a Panchakarma retreat is?
I know, that sounds a little daunting, doesn't it? So what Panchakarma is it's an Ayurvedic detoxification and cleansing program, and it's a 7-day program. And what we do is we work through the 7 tissue systems in the body, which is your immune system, your blood, your muscles, your fat, your bones, your nervous system, and the reproductive system. And it cleanses and detoxifies them, so you get to like shake your Etch-a-Sketch off and start with a new slate. And so when we do this program, we usually devote a week of preparation to the body by preparing it for this cleanse, and then we do a week cleanse, and then there's a week of post Panchakarma reorganization back into a regular diet. So what we did was we had the women prepare themselves before the retreat, and then we had our week there in Bali, and then we had a few days afterwards together to do the post Panchakarma part of the program, which is reintroducing the foods.
Now you
in
said
our diet.
women. Do men go on this?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Mhm.
So just for our viewing audience, what is an Ayurvedic naturopath?
What it is actually I'm a naturopath and an Ayurvedic practitioner, so I've put those two together because I use a lot of Ayurvedic principles in my work predominantly, but naturopathy is very similar to Ayurveda with more of the Western twist, and Ayurveda is more of the Eastern twist. So I love the merging of East and West. That's been part of my journey in this lifetime, is to bring the wisdom from the East into our culture so that we can glean from the wisdom that they have known for so many thousands of years.
Yeah.
In fact, about 5,000 years ago, Ayurveda started being recorded. Before that, it was an oral tradition because they didn't really have the written word. And so we say that it's at least that old, but probably more like 25,000 if we really knew how long they were orally working with these principles.
So I'm pretty versed in Chinese medicine, which is which basically came from Indian traditions. Is that correct?
Yes,
a
it's
lot
about-
of it. I know in Chinese medicine we have the 5 elements, which is earth, water, fire, metal, wood. And in Ayurvedic, it's
Ether,
ether, air,
fire, water, and earth.
Earth.
Yes.
Yeah. So
yes.
they're similar.
Uh-huh. What happened was Ayurveda traveled through Tibet and into China, and it took a couple thousand years for that to happen. So they say that Chinese medicine's around 3,000 years old, and Ayurveda around 5.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
How long have you been practicing?
I started practicing about 30 years ago. So
30 years.
yes,
The same time that
1984.
I started to get into Chinese medicine. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
I've always respected it. I never really got into it until I really met you and went on this Panchakarma retreat, and we had so much fun. We had
sure
so
did.
much fun. Well, there was our little theme was, does it get any better than this?
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. We were getting part of having to have a Panchakarma retreat is getting massages every day. And when you're in Ubud, what was it, $10 a day? $10 for an hour massage. We would walk up to this place
And the rice paddies.
in the rice paddies, and what was do you remember the name of that place we went to?
You know, I was trying to remember it because I just sent my sister and her fiance there, and I couldn't remember the name, but I said, just follow this path up the rice paddies at this bridge, and you'll find it. And they did go up there, but they didn't find the place we got treated, but they went to the restaurant.
Right. Oh, they went to the restaurant.
Yes.
Yeah, and beyond the rice paddies, if you walked, what, about
Maybe a half a mile
half a
further.
mile after you've had this massage, there's a restaurant all the way in nowhere that they raised their own vegetables. It was organic, and we'll get into it because that journey, we kind of went a little bit off the Panchakarma into a little bit direction. We'll get into that in a minute, but I want to ask you, because I know what brought me to Chinese medicine. What brought you to Ayurvedic principles medicine?
When I was about 16, I started practicing yoga, and I was so into it. And then I got into my whole nutritional eating and everything because I started having children fairly young after I got married. And so I really wanted to, take care of my body well for that process. And when I discovered that there was actually a medical system that was related to yoga, I just found like I had found my home. And then what was more beautiful about it was that it was devoted to the feminine principle in the universe. And for me, it all came together. I just felt like this is my journey. I can devote myself to honoring the feminine as Gaia, as Earth, whatever we might want to call it in our particular environment, and we can stay in alignment with her principles instead of all the man-made products and all of the ways that man or woman has affected the earth in a way that could destroy the earth. And Ayurveda is about preserving the earth and listening to her and the wisdom that comes through her in the form of herbal medicine and some of these treatments that we do.
It must be very interesting right now because we are in our feminine energy on the planet.
So
it wasn't
much.
like that when you got into it.
No.
But this whole 2012 was about a shift on the planet, was about getting in touch with all this feminine energy.
Absolutely.
So that's kind of interesting.
Yeah,
That,
yeah.
It's taken this long to get to that place. And what's happening on the planet right now and the earth and the shift that's going on all around us. We see it all over the place, that people are really getting more in touch with that energy that is just blossoming like a bud, a rose coming out of the ground.
Yeah, you know, back then there obviously was hardly anyone that knew what Ayurvedic medicine was, but we've had such a tipping point now,
Right.
you know, in the last year where...
Deepak Chopra certainly has brought attention to Ayurvedic because
Yes. And I believe that it is a big piece in why the feminine principle can now actually be honored because
and
we're...
breathe.
Yes.
Breathe. Breathe.
And all our sisters in India are starting to be acknowledged and to be heard finally, and I think there's going to be a whole resurgence of the feminine coming out of that.
That's happening.
Mhm.
Yeah, I wrote a great article on the divine feminine energy. I write for the Beverly Hills Times Magazine, and that was one of the articles I wrote about honoring the divine feminine within us all. Men too, you know, we have both energies in us, and we all need to work with getting in touch with that and honoring it. That's the most important thing is to honor it, honor that. What was your education like to become an Ayurvedic doctor back then?
Well, I was fortunate enough because there was a man, Dr. Vasant Lad, who had come to the United States a couple years before I started studying, and he had written a book called Ayurveda, The Science of Self-Healing. And when I read that book, I knew that I had to meet this man, and I don't know why this happened, but I was very happy that it did. They happened to have his phone number of his house at the end of the book way back then. And so when I picked up the phone at the end of the book and called the number, he happened to pick the phone up, and we had an instant connection and talked for about an hour. And I was able to actually have a conversation with him and convince him to come to California and teach with me being his host for about 8 years.
How special.
It
It's
was
great to
very
have-
special. I had young daughters, 3 of them at the time, and there was no way I could travel to study. So I just figured if I didn't get them to California, I probably would have to wait 10 or 15 years. And so
Wow.
he was excited to come as much as I was, and our journey together began. And so after about 8 years of studying with him in California, then I was able to go and move myself to Albuquerque and leave my children with my ex-husband and do my own educational journey, you know, more.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
We're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back with Vijaya Stern and learn more about Ayurvedic.
Lately had this feeling, you true feelings been revealing. You have been concealing these thoughts that you've been dealing. My heart, what you were stealing, fell out a hole that you can't fill in. But I can't paint you as a villain. Learn from mistakes I've made, paths I've crossed and games I've played. So I can't really say one thing, cause karma can be a bitch, and I'll be damned for you make me as a hypocrite. So I take fade like bitches get their ass kicked, shitting on me like you a spastic. Yeah, this situation's tragic, only to the melodramatic. So why so emotional? Lot of fish in the sea, almost the ocean full. And you don't love me anyway, but maybe you will someday.
We're back with Get Healthy the Wynters Way. I'm Sharyn Wynters, and I'm here with my lovely guest, Vijaya Stern.
Thank you.
So I know what it was like for me to learn Chinese principles because it's so different from what we're used to. Was it hard for you to learn about Ayurveda?
Actually, it felt like I already knew it and I was remembering it. And
that's
I really, it made me believe in past lives after that because it came so easily and fluidly with me. And so many people try to practice, let's say, for one thing, pulse diagnosis, and they can't do it. For me, it just slipped right in, and I've been teaching pulse diagnosis for many years, and I think it could have only occurred if I had been doing it for many lifetimes and the memory was in my cells.
Explain to them what pulse diagnosis is.
It's an amazing diagnostic tool that you're using the pulse at 7 different levels. So we go to a really deep pulse and lift up through these levels to feel different things. I can feel something called your prakriti, which is your constitutional type. And then your mental constitutional type is felt at the next level. Then the 7 tissue systems, your prana, tejas, and ojas, which is the life force, magnetism, and your reserve of nutrition. Then there's expressions of all of those in 5 different places in the body. And then all 12 organs. Then your mental imbalance and your physical imbalance is felt on the last 2 pulse levels.
And that's all from the pulse?
That's all from the pulse. Yeah. People are blown away when they have a session because they just can't believe that their arm is speaking this language that they just don't even know how to read. So it's real fun for me because I get instant information, and from that I'm able to take that information and create an herbal formulation specifically for that person. And I can do it all so rapidly here. See somebody over there pulling his sleeve up.
We're pulling our sleeves up. Well, you've taken my pulse many times.
Yes, I have.
And is that how you diagnose a health issue in someone?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I can feel it before a lot of medical tests could detect it. And part of it is we have less leeway in the Ayurvedic system to state when something has deviated than the Western system. The Western system will take a person into account, and they may have several symptoms, and the doctor will go, oh, you're fine, and they won't really hear the person and that they're suffering in some way. So with Ayurveda, we listen in at such a deep level in the pulse, and we're able to see and feel the deviations in the pulse in a way that we know which element is inside wreaking havoc. And we actually use a word for the 3 body types in Ayurveda, and it's called dosha. And the word dosha means mistake or fault. And so when the elements have made a mistake in the body by mixing with either a negative thought or a negative feeling, then they will distort into a dosha versus what I talked about a second ago, prana, tejas, and ojas, which is just life force animation and reserve and hormonal expression. So our goal is to get everything that comes through our body to convert into divine beingness. And if we have any kind of fault in our thinking, then it will translate as fault in the physical body.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
It's fascinating.
I know.
I love it. I love learning all this stuff.
I know.
So when you're treating someone, how does diet and food come into the equation of Ayurveda?
What we do is, because we're working with these 5 elements or 3 doshas it translates down to, we're able to actually see which foods may increase or decrease the dosha or the elements, and we pull those foods out of the diet if there's already an increase inside the body. And that way what we're able to do is reduce the amount of that element in the body till we get back to the homeostasis that's in your original pulse, the lowest or deepest level of the pulse, which is called your prakriti, which was determined at the moment that the sperm and the egg met. So that set your baseline, and then there's like layers on an onion that have built through all the distortions throughout lifetimes.
And
or
you're
this
telling
lifetime.
me that you can feel all that.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Yes.
take my pulse again.
I will. We'll play tonight. How's that? Yes, I know. It's. I'm always taking my pulse because I just love that I can get that kind of communication from the body.
Right.
You know.
So through that, you can figure out what the best diet to give somebody, and
Yes.
and maybe this is a good time to talk about what we've done together.
Mm-hmm.
So we were in Bali, and I've been raw or almost raw since 1973. I know it now. It's becoming the in thing, and it's a fad, and everybody's, going raw. And there's a lot of benefits to raw. But what I've found through the years is that I'll have a client that comes to me, and they're having problems eating raw food. And I couldn't figure out, when something is so good, how could it have a negative effect on somebody's body?
I agree.
And
I
so
agree.
here we are in Ubud, and what I didn't know, because I checked out nothing about Ubud at all. I just went blinded on spirit and trust in my instinct. It was a raw food haven. There were 3 or 4 different raw food restaurants. The food there is just so healthy. And I was asked, they had just finished this beautiful spa called the 5 Elements.
Mm-hmm.
It's a raw food spa, and they asked me to speak, and I invited you to speak with me because you had given a seminar with at the Villa Gaia
Mm-hmm.
with what was that woman? Who was that woman? The tantric lady.
Yes.
She's the queen of tantric.
And I forgot her name right now. Margot Anand.
Margot Anand was there, and that was a thrill to meet Margot Anand, because she brought tantric, which is
She did.
to the, I guess, to the
West.
world.
To the
Right?
west.
To the west,
Yeah.
right. And so off Vijay and I go to the 5 Elements, which is the most incredible spa you'll ever want to go to. I mean, the place is just absolutely, when you think of paradise, that's paradise. And
You've landed.
We've landed, and we had the most amazing food you'll ever experience.
Mm-hmm.
And that night, we went out to dinner. And I was sharing with you my frustration as a naturopath and dealing with food, and you shared with me, and we came together that we need to marry both principles, Ayurveda and raw food. And we did a website called Raw Veda that is now working. It took us over a year
Mm-hmm.
to do this, and you can go onto this website and you can see the benefits of raw food, because they have great benefits, but you can also see the benefits of cooked food. And then you can take a test and find out what dosha you are. You're either vata, pitta, and kapha, and you'll have a little bit of elements of some of them, but there'll be one that's really strong.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can download for $5 a 7-day meal plan based on your dosha. And it's pretty incredible, because the remarks that we've gotten back is now people that thought they couldn't eat certain raw foods or couldn't eat raw are now being able to eat it because they're eating the right raw foods for their body. The next day, Vijay and I went to a temple. And Larry, can you get that picture up? And yeah, that's it, Ayurveda. And we were on a bridge, and we bowed to each other's.
As we did, to bring in these 2 systems.
And to bring in these 2 systems, to bring a marriage, to bring harmony in. And so that was a really, really, and then we ate again.
It seemed like we did a lot of
We
that
did
there.
a lot of eating, we did a lot of shopping, we did a lot of massage, and I think Ubud is probably one of my favorite places that I've ever visited. I've traveled all over the world, and it's, Vijay and I were looking at actually land there to open up our own little spa retreat, because it's quite a special place. There's no crime. Everybody's so loving. It's just the petals in your bathtubs.
Yeah, the ability to have a massage every day sold me.
Really? Yeah, yeah. What's so special about Ayurvedic treatments? Is it Ayurvedic or Ayurveda?
Ayurveda is the name of the science, but you might use Ayurvedic if you said Ayurvedic medicine, so
I
then
got
it
it.
becomes
Okay.
more like an adjective. So Ayurveda, what I think is the most special treatment in Ayurveda is what we call Abhyanga, Swedana, and Shirodhara. There are 3 different treatments. So Abhyanga is a massage that you get by 2 people, and we're synchronized exactly on both sides of your body so that it feels like the 4-armed goddess is working on your body. And we're lavishingly pouring hot sesame oil with all kinds of herbs and warm milk cooked into it. And nourishing
we're going
the
to
body.
get that as soon as this show is over.
And once the body is completely oiled and treated so well by these 4 hands, then next we put a steam tent over the table that cooks herbalized steam into the body, and it opens all the pores up so that rich oil starts to saturate into the body. And once you think that you've reached heaven, then we take the tent off and we start Shirodhara, which is pumping warm sesame oil over the 3rd eye, and it washes the 3rd eye and removes any cellular memory all the way back to the pre-womb experience so that you're not carrying around that type of stress in your mind, and it just cleans the slate off so that you actually get to start over with that beginner's mind, with the heart open and the mind free.
And how do people react to this? Because it's quite different from a regular massage.
It's very different.
I
A lot of
guess there's a
people
lot of
crying, you know, and they just feel like they have never received that kind of love and that grace before. And for some people, it's a big heart opener.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes it takes a while to get them back off the table because they almost feel immobilized by the bliss.
I used to give massage years ago, and I always would start rocking somebody. Just start that process. And just that process of being rocked, because we haven't been rocked since we were a little baby. Just that process of rock, and it just opens them up to be able to receive the massage. And they would just start crying just on that.
Yeah.
It's amazing to me how in need we are of contact, and how medically it's becoming more and more removed. Doctors are even afraid to hold their hand because they're going to get some kind of lawsuit when, you know,
We'll take our hands any old time.
Absolutely. I mean, touch. Without touch, babies will die. And touch is being, in the doctor's office, the doctor sits behind the desk and the patient sits in front of the desk and nobody touches, and they give you this information, and it has nothing to do with your soul, your spirit, your heart. And then you're supposed to take that information and deal with it.
Yeah, and live in your isolated world and try to process through it all.
We've got to change the system.
Well, that's where the feminine principles coming in and reconnecting all of us as one heart.
Yeah. Oh, we're you know what? Well, let's take a break, a short break, and we'll be back with more with Vijaya. Back with Get Healthy the Wynters Way. I'm Sharyn Wynters, and my guest today is Vijaya Stern. So let's get back to what we were talking about, because this is fascinating. I'm sure our viewers are going to go, oh my God, this is really fascinating, because no one's ever explained it to me, the way you explain it, it's wonderful. So the question is, how does food come into play with these 3 different body types? How do you decide what foods works well with what body type?
Okay. So, for instance, if you were an inflammatory type person, you would be considered in Ayurveda a Pitta body type. You might get a lot of red ruddiness on your face or bloodshot eyes or digestive disorders, things that cause inflammation, maybe rheumatoid arthritis. So what we would want to do is pull out the inflammatory foods, like things that are hot and spicy, like garlic, onions, chili, cayenne pepper, horseradish. Those are hot. We don't need to add hot to a hot body. We also wouldn't want to add things that have been aged or fermented either, because they create an enzymatic action that's heating. Or salt, which holds a lot of heat in the body. But what would be medicine for this body type would be things that are sweet. We all know if we've eaten something spicy and we eat something sweet afterwards, we can cool our tongue back down. We can cool our whole body down by eating lots of fresh fruit and whole grains and dairy products that are raw and organic, or things like nuts and starchy vegetables. Those are all sweet foods. Or things that are bitter, like leafy greens, arugula, radicchio, and a lot of herbs are bitter, or astringent foods like the cruciferous vegetables, the beans, pomegranates, persimmons are also astringent, or things that are dry, like crackers or popcorn. The water's been taken out, and that's what astringent does, because a lot of times when we're hot, we start to hold water in the body, so it helps reduce that inflammation and swelling. So that would be the way we would treat a Pitta body type. We would do much different if we were treating a Kapha body type that tends to hold a lot of weight and has more of a stagnancy in their body and maybe gets blood sugar problems, obesity, depression, things where their whole system is moving very slow. We would want to warm their body up with those same spicy foods that we would take out of the Pitta body type. We would still want the bitter and astringent foods for them, but they would not want to do sweet foods or sour foods. Sour increases appetite, and the sweet would put on the weight and also raise the blood sugar. And then the last body type is Vata. And Vata body types, they tend to be very thin. They have the ectomorph body type, and they need to put more weight on their body and more mass. So they do well on sweet foods that are very anabolic. They love sour foods because it helps their enzymes, so it helps them to have an appetite. And salty food brings water into this dry body that's not holding water well. But they would not do well on too much spice because it would over-catabolize the food out of their body, or bitter or astringent foods that are drying and dehydrating. And this body type needs all their water. So we're alchemizing in the body with these 6 tastes so that the dosha is removed out of the body and the body is just moving through itself like an empty container, what we call prana, which is life force and animation from the spirit, can just move through the body without obstruction, that the light and the radiance and the charisma that comes from fire can radiate outward without burning. And then the water and the earth element can nourish the body and hydrate the body without creating phlegm, fat, or mucus on the body, that it nourishes but it doesn't stagnate and congest. So we just keep watching the body through the pulse and making sure that those elements are in alignment with what your original pulse was. So for one person, what might be balanced is 3 Vata, 2 Pitta, 1 Kapha in their constitutional pulse, but maybe in their current imbalance, they have 4 Vata, 2 Pitta, 1.5 Kapha. So we'd know we'd have to lower the Vata by a point and Kapha by 0.5 point. So we watch these numbers, and it's so scientifically broken down so that we're able to just keep peeling the layers of the onion to find their essence again.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting because when we did this website, Ayurveda, we were trying to come up with recipes that would work, and every ingredient, we're talking every herb, every spice, I would say, well, let's put this in. Then you go, no, a Vata can't have that, but it'd be good for Pitta, so then we'd have to find a recipe for the Pitta. And that's why it took us so long to do Ayurveda. It's really brilliant that we accomplish it, because the two really don't go hand in hand,
No,
right?
they're
Because
pretty opposite in some ways.
right, because in Ayurveda they don't eat raw food.
Especially because in India there's so many bacteria that they need to cook food for it to be healthy. And then, of course, Vata body type, without eating bitter and astringent foods, which is all your salads and leafy greens and all that, they don't do well on that. That was the biggest challenge, was trying to find foods for Vata. So what we came up with is that Vatas do need to eat some cooked food, or they're going to create a lot of distension and bloating and bowel issues. But also that they could lean more in the nuts and the fruits and the sweet things. They just couldn't do the leafy greens like most raw people do, to the point that they end up getting irritable bowels or something.
Right. And what's great is you don't have to be 100% raw or 50% raw. What you can do is just download, find out what your dosha is, Vata, Pitta, or Kapha, and then you can download your 7-day meal plan and just start implementing some of those dishes into your food. And you will not believe the changes that can take place when you start putting in the proper foods for your constitution. It's just an amazing thing. It just, the inflammation goes away, bloating goes away, constipation goes away, because you're eating the proper food for your dosha. I mean, there are all these diets out there, you know, and none of them take into consideration these principles that we put together, except perhaps the
Blood type.
diet, the blood type diet.
Unfortunately, that blood type diet is maybe 20 years old now,
Right.
you know, and we're comparing that to a over 5,000 year old.
Right.
So Ayurveda's had the time to test this system, and this blood type one, we're the guinea pigs on that one, but not to say that there isn't some value there.
Right.
But
So I know, for me, when a new person comes to me who knows nothing about this world, nothing about this world, and they come to me and they need help, how do you, as a naturopath who deals in your world, how do you handle it? What's one of the first things that you would do with a new patient?
what I always do in an appointment is I take their pulse first, and I also read their face and their tongue, so I know who I'm speaking to before I start. And then I do about an hour and 15 minutes of education on their first appointment, and I explain the premise of Ayurveda, something called Sankhya philosophy, which helps us to understand how spirit is taking form through our body and the 5 elements, so that they can reconnect with their spirit and the journey that their spirit has taken to land in this body.
So take me through that.
So in Sankhya philosophy, what we say is that there's an absolute principle in the universe. They call that Purusha, but we might call it higher intelligence or God. And that there's also nature, which we call in Ayurveda Prakriti. So it's the moment when consciousness and matter meet, which is the exact same moment when your parent's sperm and egg meets, and that creates creation. So as above, so below. So our mother, father are aligning with one another to create the embodiment of this consciousness into form. So nature's bringing the form, consciousness is bringing our enlightened self into form. And our soul ends up being the end result, like the child of its parents. It has all the qualities of consciousness and matter. We also have within our soul something we call buddhi. And what buddhi means is intellect, and it comes from the same root word as Buddha. So we all have a Buddha nature, or we could say a Christ nature, or a Mohammed nature, that part of us that's all-knowing. So what we do in Ayurveda is keep the person intact with their buddhi instead of dropping into what we in Sanskrit call ahamkara, which means I am this illusion.
So how do you keep somebody in their buddhi?
What we do is first we recognize that every time you finish the sentence I am, you might as well in the back of your mind, even if you don't speak it out loud, say illusion. So if you say I am happy, illusion is better than just saying I'm happy, because happiness can always be taken away. So if we say that anything after the word I am is an illusion, then we can just go back to the I am. instead of saying I am a woman, I remember that I just am. I'm pure consciousness experiencing womanhood. Being a woman would be a limitation if I knew that I was just everything and I could take on whichever form I chose.
That's from the Bible. I am that I am.
Yeah, exactly.
I am
That
I am.
I am. I am that I am.
Yeah, I am that I am.
And so what we do is keep reminding the person that they aren't their disease. They aren't even everything they say about themselves. And there's a Zen koan, which is a riddle that the Zen master gives his student, which is enlightenment is the bucket with the bottom broken through. So to be enlightened isn't to get out there somewhere with all this knowledge, but to be able to drop our wisdom in through our body, but then not to identify with us being the wise one, because that's putting us back in the box or the illusion of self that now we're the teacher, we're the enlightened one, which is just going to make our ego bigger than it was even when we were in illness. So just to let that pass through us, and that creates a vacuum. And we've all heard that saying, nature abhors a vacuum. As we allow that wisdom to pass through us, it actually creates the vacuum that pulls consciousness in from above through our body, and every moment gets to be an experience of new information. And that's much easier to do than trying to remember everything and sort it and you know, store it in our mind body somewhere so that we can call it up whenever we need it. How great it would be if we just got out of the way and allowed wisdom, which we call the living vidya, to come through us.
And how powerful this is to a person. Because
It's
all
so
of a
empowering.
sudden, instead of giving up your power that you give up when you go to a doctor, because basically you're giving up your power.
Absolutely. You hand it right over.
What you're doing, what I'm doing, is empowering somebody, saying you have the power. You have the power. You created this, and whatever you created, you can uncreate. And the mind is the most powerful thing that we have, because whether you think you can or you can't, you're right.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure you experience the same thing. I can have two people come to me. They can have the same dis-ease. One person is positive and their attitude is wonderful and goes through it, and the other person doesn't have a good attitude. One gets better and one doesn't.
Yeah.
What's the discerning factor? The discerning factor is their attitude, how they think, their thoughts. I have a chapter in my book called Toxic Thoughts and Emotions. They're the most powerful healing tool we have, or they can make us sick.
I love to be able to sit with someone and us find that common place where we are one, which is what the word namaste means, that we honor that place.
Which is what we were doing, which was what we
Absolutely.
were doing on the bridge. We were honoring each other.
Yeah, and when you call that forth in another human being and you show them that part of yourself, you become a reflection for them. And if we could all always do that with one another, we would truly be living heaven on earth. But we're creating a slow hell here by giving our power to an authority that really doesn't know what they're doing. When we look at Western medicine, even being just a couple hundred years old, you know.
We're going to take a short break. We'll be right back with Get Healthy the Wynters Way.
Life shifting right by easy. Needed you to know that it's hard to let you go. Said it and I said it before. Needed you to see that it's hard to let you leave. Life shifting right by easy, girl. It's not what you hope, 'cause I just have to let you go. Girl, I know it's worth waiting for, but I just have to let you go. Not saying I don't need you, I do, but all of the things that you're putting me through.
We're back with Get Healthy the Wynters Way. I'm Sharyn Wynters, and my guest is Vijaya Stern. So we were talking about, God, we were talking about so many things. You
I
just
know.
took me on a journey. It's just incredible, Vijaya. I'm so glad I'm so glad Spirit sent me you. And
Me too.
Huh?
Me too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We really, I'd love to honor your expertise and as you do mine, and it's a great give relationship. But I want to get back to a couple of things I had a thought about as you were talking about food and the different types of food for the different constitutions. Is that food? It could be the same thing, but it's poison to one person and medicine to another person.
Absolutely. In fact, we have a saying in Ayurveda that says everything in the universe is medicine, everything in the universe is poison, depending on who uses it, how they use it, and when they use it. If you're an air type and you're in the fall season, which it's very dry and air-like, and you start eating a lot of dry crackers and popcorn and salads and drinking coffee that's dehydrating, that will be poison for you. But if you live in the tropics and it's moist there and you're not in the Vata years of your life, which start after 55, and your body type isn't Vata, you can probably eat a large amount of those foods, and those same foods would become medicine for you. So a Kapha person, those same foods would be medicine that would be poison for the Vata person.
Yeah. So can you tell us the difference between a raw food diet and what Ayurveda is?
Yes. A raw food diet, and I too was also in my raw food phase around 1973, and I did that for several years and had my children eating raw. And I thought that I would be raw for the rest of my life, and still until I started getting some bowel issues from all the raw food that was just drying out the intestinal tract. But what I found was that by cooking food, that it brought the moisture and the heat back. And raw food people tend to have a fear of fire, in some way. They don't want to heat their food up because they think it will destroy the food. But sometimes if our digestive tract is cold and we don't have our own internal fire, we need to rely on external fire. And fire is fire. It's like it doesn't matter if it's on the inside or the outside. In Ayurveda, we say, again, everything's medicine, everything's poison.
Right.
So we don't discriminate whether it's on the inside or the outside. We discriminate who are we speaking with and what's the strength of their Agni or digestive fire.
And
So
Agni is digestive fire.
So if we have to complement or support that fire, we will do that. Sometimes we even use meat in Ayurveda, which comes from a more vegetarian culture, in the Indian culture, as medicine even. So we don't discriminate against anything if it happens to be medicine for a person.
Because you mentioned dairy, you mentioned meat. So in
Yes.
Ayurveda, you can eat all those things.
Absolutely, for the right body type. And
the
for
right-
instance, a Vata person could eat dark meat chicken, but they wouldn't eat white meat chicken because it's so dry. A Kapha person should eat the white meat. Some people shouldn't eat red meat at all. Others, like the Vata that's not very grounded and in their body, a steak might ground them in their body and get them right back to where they need to be. It's not like they have to eat it every day, but they might just need a little support with the earth element that's strong in animal food. So that's where Ayurveda is different. They take everything that nature's provided and say, what's best for the alchemy of this body? What raw food says from their head most of the time is, this is a good system, it's clean, and we're going to all follow this. And unfortunately, we all then become like sheep following one person's idea of what's healthy. And that one person might have been a Pitta Kapha type that has very strong Agni. And we're talking to a poor Vata person that keeps eating raw and gets thinner and thinner and weaker and weaker. I know many of these people, and they're
I
really
do too.
tearing their health down.
I do too.
Yeah.
I do too.
And it's not honoring that individual at all. It's expecting them to be like everyone else, and it actually creates a self-loathing after a while,
I hear you. It's been a real issue, because I'm involved in the raw food world. In fact, we're doing the Raw Spirits Festival coming up, and we're doing a workshop on how to eat raw food Ayurvedically, what is right for the body, because if you're going to go down that road, you need to know what foods are right for the body. It's so important. A woman that's going through menopause, can Ayurvedic help that?
Absolutely. In fact, that
Without
happens
going
to be my
through-
specialty, is menopausal women. And I went through menopause at a fairly young age, 44, and many of the women in my family did the same thing. So it was just our healthy balance. But I never wanted to use hormones myself. And so what I did at a young age was to start to discover what herbs in Ayurveda would support the estrogens in the body, support progesterone, support testosterone. And I was able to categorize these herbs by the hormones and use them for each dosha, because actually each dosha is related to each hormone also. So kapha body type is that full voluptuous body type that's very estrogenic. You know,
Right.
you see a kapha body type, you can tell she has a lot of estrogen. In fact, in India, the Indian men choose women that look very kapha-like because they know that they will give offspring that are
Right.
healthy, and they'll
Right.
be able to have a lot of children.
Right.
That's estrogen. If you look at someone and they're very athletic in their body type, they have more of the mesomorph or muscle body type, they're usually pitta types, and their testosterone levels are high, and that's why they have such a strong drive, why their body's so strong, and they're very competitive. And so we know for a pitta person, probably we're going to have to pull the testosterone down. And for a vata, their progesterone's high, but they don't have a lot of stored estrogen. So I can look at that in the pulse, because when I'm taking the pulse of the reproductive system, I can see what dosha's in there. And then I can rebuild what's lacking in the reproductive system. And I have great results helping women get through menopause without symptoms. And much safer than building up estrogens synthetically, which happens.
So you don't
when-
use any bioidenticals?
No.
Right. Yeah, I know. Who should eat raw?
I would say the best person to eat raw is someone that has a strong Agni or digestive fire, because they can handle breaking down that much fiber, and they can also handle having a colder food in their body because we're not warming it up by cooking. And also the pitta and kapha body types.
Right.
Vatas do not do well eating much raw, maybe 50% if they're lucky, but they shouldn't be eating the leafy greens, you know, or too much cold food, or even the roughage. Their body doesn't need that kind of roughage.
Now, it's interesting because I'm Vata, and I've been raw for a long time. Not 100% raw, but I'm finding that I do need some cooked food.
And the older
and
you
that's
get,
that's a hard one for me, because my heart, my spirit wants to just be raw, but my body is saying, okay, get out of the ego, Sharyn, and get into your body and find out what's best for your body, not what your head thinks is best for your body.
yeah, and that's
And
so
a hard-
admirable to
and that's
to
a
get to
hard
that
one
place.
to do.
Yeah, it is. It's
a
very
hard
hard.
one
And
to
the
do.
older we get, the more we go into what's called your Vata years of your life, that start at 55 and they go until we transition out of the body. So that the older we get, the more we need to cook our food. The younger we are, from 0 to 16, you're in the kapha years of your life, and you've got the baby
So
fat all that.
each journey of your years is a different
Dosha
dosha.
rules
That's-
that period, yes.
That's interesting.
Just like the seasons of a year. Fall is Vata, winter and early spring is Kapha, late spring and summer is Pitta. So those times of the year, we're going to have to focus on the lowering of that particular dosha.
If somebody needs to get in touch with you, what website do you want them to go to?
They would go to www.livingrasa.com.
Okay.
It's livingrasa.com.
And the website that we did together is Ayurveda, AHRAWVEDA.com, and it's loaded with such great information, and the recipes are wonderful. They really are. So it's a really great website. There's our picture, Vijaya, back in Bali. We got to go do that trip again.
Let's do it.
That was great. That was a great experience, walking through the monkey forest and the market, where they shot part of the Eat, Pray, and Love, the love part
Mm-hmm.
Part of that was shot in Ubud because I recognized the market. What was it called? The market.
Yeah.
Just the market, but it's not like any market you've ever experienced. We were in the market buying our pants, our silk pants, our sarongs. Yes, what a great experience.
Yeah.
I'm so glad Spirit came to me and said, "Do this, do this, do this." It was just a wonderful thing. And I did ask you, men can do Panchakarma too, right?
Oh, yes, absolutely. We just happened to have an all-women's retreat, which just was really fun. But
Yeah.
men come to do Panchakarma all the time. And in fact, I invite everyone to get online and check out, what Panchakarma is. And there's several places around the country where you can do it. But also, I invite you to connect with us, and we'll put together another Bali trip.
That sounds great. I'm for that. Jaya, thank you so much
You're
for
welcome.
coming all this way down here and spending some time with me. But we're going to spend some more time after the show.
Yes, we are.
We are. We're going to go have some food. You can take my pulse and tell me what I can have for dinner. I hope to have you around me all the time. And thank you so much for listening. And if you like the show, share it. Share something that you like. Spread the word. And this is Sharyn Wynters for Get Healthy the Wynters Way. And I'll see you next week